So this comic here asks a very specific question. What if the Predator, or more specifically the alien species known as the Yautja, what if they arrived on Earth, Marvel's Earth, and it leaves Spider-Man, Peter Parker, the almost infamous hero of New York, in a very peculiar situation? And to be honest, this story has the potential to be one of the greatest crossovers Marvel has released, or one of the worst, depending on how it shapes out from here. Either way though, we move over and we pick up in the heart of New York. But this isn't a day like any other, it is summertime, the sun is out, excruciatingly so. Everything and everyone is just super hot, burning, the sun is unrelenting in his sunlight. Garbage cooked on the street corners. Subway vents gassed out hot, stale air. On sidewalks, fire escape, people sweated through their clothes. The summer heat made the city more cruel, and as the heat and thermometer spiked, so did crime. As we pick up in the middle of one specific crime scene, one that will almost become a reoccurrence and isn't like any other type of usual crime or crime scene. As the comic continues on to say, robbers, assaults, murderers, those are all your usual crimes, but this one was different. This wasn't a bullet to the head or a knife to the gut, this was something new. You see, most of the time when there is a killing, it happens fast. But here, whoever did this, the person had some time and care, even artistry put into it. And as we see the result, it's almost disturbing and disgusting how these people, these bodies are mutilated and left, completely skinned alive. So yeah, it just goes to show you whoever, whatever is doing this, it's not your average serial killer or a person sick in the head. But right here, just keep in mind these two figures, because one, we see a grueling older woman, a detective on the case, and the other seems to be some sort of containment agent here trying to, get everything cleaned up. As this other agent goes on to say, this building was condemned a few years ago. The neighbors say it's always been full of junkie squatters ever since. Could it be drug related, a stolen stash, or maybe even a neighborhood vigilante wanting to clean up his block? And these are some reasonable theories, but this detective here goes on to say, yeah, you're thinking logically, but skinning someone alive, in my mind anyway, defies logic. No, this wasn't a robbery, but something was stolen. Because every one of the bodies here, specific pieces are taken completely removed. A jaw, a rib, even a finger. Meaning whoever is doing this, whoever is committing these atrocities, they not only have some sort of motive, but they're taking almost trophies of their kills. The detective here even going on to name this person the Skinner, as of course referring to how the person, whoever is doing this, is skinning the people alive. But eventually the detective starts to put two and two together. Wait, why is this containment agent here to clean up? Why is he here investigating and talking to the neighbors, putting theories together? And just like that, when the real containment crew comes, we see that the person she was talking to this entire time, no, that wasn't one of them or even someone that was supposed to be here. And as we cut outside, we see it was Peter Parker himself, Spider-Man, on the job, doing his due diligence and trying to see what actually happened. Peter here, though, being still employed at the Daily Bugle, a reporter. So of course, naturally, he needs to get stories and the word around about what is happening in the streets of New York. And a new serial killer, even though it's nothing new for Marvel's New York with as many superpowered people, but one whose MO is skinning people, that could be decent in headline news. And as he talks with Jake Jonah to get the word around, we find out that the Daily Bugle has seen better days. They're not only on the verge of completely going out of business, but Peter himself is 5 canceled subscriptions away from losing his own job. Though in the middle of swinging to the Daily Bugle to get this information over to Jonah, his spider sense goes off and there's a robbery nearby. Criminals and people, thugs, taking this opportunity in this heat. So of course Spider-Man takes the detour and goes after them. Though what he didn't account for in their pursuit is a couple of children playing right in the street, playing in the water of an open fire hydrant trying to cool off as his car comes speeding down. Though before they're able to be pancaked and flattened on the hot streets of New York, Spider-Man is able to get them out just in time, whipping them up and pulling them aside as the van gets away. Though as we were about to find out and see, the people in this van, the criminals, would have wished they got Spider-Man instead of what's coming to them. Because as we see, and what we can safely assume, the leader of this group, this little criminal operation here, he quickly gets out knowing Spider-Man and whoever else could be hot on their trail. He goes on to take the money and say, we'll split up the cash. Then we each go our separate ways and nobody talks to anybody else for 2 weeks. And while giving these instructions to his crew, he hears nothing in response. So he turns around and sees their gruesome bodies on the floor. Meaning whoever did this, literally in seconds of him not paying attention, murdered his entire crew. This person, this entity, this rogue hunter is not only skilled, but swift, being able to take out multiple armed men in the span of a second and silently. And this leader here, he isn't anybody special, as he gets the same treatment, turning around and having his literal face, the skin pulled off of his face, pulled off his own body. Painful and gruesome stuff, but it doesn't just end there, as whoever this is They relish in the pain and in the suffering, the hunt, as they pull out a blade, stabbing the leader in the chest, finally killing him once and for all. And like I said before, this person here, this assailant, each time he does this, each time he takes someone out and ends them, he takes a little bit of a trophy. As we see them put the face of the person on their face, wearing it like a mask, and almost smiling, having a grand old time going through the streets of New York, causing murders and mayhem wherever they went. And with Spider-Man, even as he finishes helping the children and getting them safe, he follows after the criminals who went away, only to find the gruesome scene. A reoccurrence, you know, just like earlier in the story and earlier in the video, he finds their lifeless bodies here in the same fashion. Spider-Man putting two and two together, realizing what happened at the apartment building wasn't just a one-off thing, but no, now we are dealing with a serial killer. Which of course, like I said, isn't anything new or special within New York, having all of the villains, superhumans, metahumans if you will, all across the city and doing what they do. But only a select few would do something like this. Of course, like maybe your Bullseyes or your Sabretooth, etc. And speaking of New York itself, we get a little bit more of panning shots and understanding about what is actually happening in the city. As of course, New York right now, it's summer. It's going through a pretty drastic and incredible heat wave. The heat here almost being like a living thing, a predator that you had to fight to survive. Every AC unit in the city was cranked to the limit. Every fan was blasted on high. And this is bad because the power grid could only take so much. Because as you see Peter here at the Daily Bugle going over the story with J. Jonah, trying to get it published and work out the kinks, suddenly the power goes off. But no, not just the power in the Daily Bugle specifically, but the entire city. Which is already horrible news when you have a heat wave like this. Now you have no working AC or no working cooling. And even worse when you have a rampaging monster or hunter or serial killer going around. And even down below within the subways of New York here, yeah, they aren't safe or special either. As on the subway ride, we pick up with a new cast of characters, one in particular being MJ herself, Mary Jane, who while just reading a book, minding her own business, going down the subway as she's done thousands of times, suddenly the power goes off and the train stops, making everybody on board panic and scream for help, not knowing what's going on, thinking they're going to be trapped in the middle of the subway in a train and just there to fend for themselves. Though MJ, being with Peter or just in the superhero community or adjacent to it if you will, she has been in more than her own fair share of dangerous situations, so of course she isn't one to immediately panic and get frightened by just a little bit of the dark. She even goes on to help some of the locals here also, fight their fears. One woman in particular being very claustrophobic, not only that, but the heat in the dark, it's just too much. Though these circumstances here are about to be nothing compared to what is coming, as because while she is here trying to calm her down, suddenly the other woman sees something moving outside of the train window. Maybe it's a worker, maybe it's someone trying to fix the transit or the tracks and get them out of there, but the people on the subway aren't going to be that lucky. As we see, it's the rogue predator here itself, wearing the human skin like a mask, like a trophy of the other people it has killed so far. Of course, now this being a situation that MJ, could rightfully be frightened of and a little bit worried about being inside of. Though back with Peter, he is none the wiser about what is happening underneath New York in the subway or with Mary Jane, as he is still dealing with the bugle and the power outages and stuff. Peter even realizing that the people of New York need to know what's going on, need to know that there's a serial killer on the loose, and to stay safe, they decide to go a little bit old school with the power down and them not having access to put out articles. The Daily Bugle goes back to their basics and printing out physical newspapers. Which, yes, in this day and age is kind of crazy, who is actually buying newspapers? But in a situation like this, it actually goes on to save many people's lives. And as we cut over a few hours later, we see just that. The people of New York handing out and giving around the papers, letting everybody be informed about what is happening in the city, even in this devastating power outage, heat wave, whatever. Because over the next few hours, as it grew as hot inside as it is outside, people did what they could to stay cool and pass time. And nobody here, the citizens of New York, the innocent people, nobody would have known they were being hunted if not for Peter. Though this is a kind of good and bad situation. Yes, Peter is the one who wrote and started the article, so his name is plastered all over it. And it's good because people are in the know. They know to be safe and not to go down dark alleyways by themselves with a hunter on the loose. But at the same time, it's bad because if anybody wants to trace who put this info out and how did they get this information in the first place, they can now directly tie it back to Peter Parker. And we see just that with a detective from the beginning snatching one of the newspapers J. Jonah was trying to sell in the streets and goes to read it herself. Seeing that this information, which was classified in her investigation, is now just plastered everywhere and was taken and was given by one man, Peter Parker. But this is bad because apparently in New York there's a new law about disseminating, spreading the photos of a crime scene without the permission of the victims or the police. which I guess kind of makes sense, but at the same time, if this information goes on to help others, them, the people of New York, stay safe in this almost trying and devastating times, yeah, you can't really fault Peter Parker for wanting the betterment of more people and not have them being skinned alive like some of the others. Though this detective, this woman, this enforcer goes on to say, I want you, J. Jonah, to bring in Peter Parker for questioning now, or I'll arrest you. And just like that up above, we see Spider-Man just swing by, completely just passing that interaction. The man she is looking for, Peter Parker, right here, except, you know, he is the amazing Spider-Man swinging off. And Peter has good reason to swing off and not care and to get to his destination safely, as because he's going back home, going back to MJ, to try and warn her or just keep her in the know about everything that's going on within the city, as Peter should and would. Mary Jane being the love of his life, she is like top priority to being safe. As he goes into the apartment, calling out to MJ, trying to say that he thinks he has a long night ahead of him, but he just wanted to check in. Though of course as he gets there, he sees no one is home, because unfortunately MJ never made it home. She was still in the subway where that creature attacked, as we see potentially Mary Jane herself caught in a crossfires. Now, if you're a villain or bad guy, you're going against Spider-Man, and you're not like some Thor level bad guy or like Thanos or whatever, just completely overpowering him. If there's one thing you don't want to do, and you can even ask Kingpin this, and we saw what happened with that when he tried to attack Aunt May, you don't want to endanger the lives of people who Peter care about. Because Peter Parker isn't like Batman, you know? He isn't so adverse to killing that he would rather die himself than take another life. Sure, Peter will absolutely hate to do that, but if it is the last resort, if that means protecting the people he loves, in this case Mary Jane, and against a complete psycho and predator, a monster like this predator is here now, Peter would have less qualms about going into a blind rage and potentially killing this killer. And speaking of this killer, we move back onto the streets of New York with one of the Daily Bugle's employees trying to sell newspapers, going on to say that there's a predator on the loose and don't be among the hunted. Come read all about it and be safe. Though unfortunately and unknowingly, he himself is about to be in a lot of danger, as because a couple of thugs saw him selling newspapers and know he has more cash on him. So of course they go up to threaten the older gentleman, and in that same vein, suddenly one is shot with an arrow, as another figure, a blur in the night, comes swooping by. And surely this is another hero of New York, you know, one of the many overpopulated superheroes and superpowered people coming to save the day and save this guy. Though we see that isn't really the case here, and unless this is like the Punisher or some other violent anti-hero, we can safely assume that this isn't like Daredevil or anything, as one of the thugs here, the people with the gun, gets shot and killed in the head by an arrow. As this person towering over the older man goes on to say, you shouldn't be out here, especially since you're not strong enough. You know, the city could be a dangerous place, especially in the dark. With this person talking, this man being none other than Kraven the Hunter himself. As he continues saying, but before you run back home to your little nest, and believe me, you should run, what was it you were saying about this predator? So yes, we find out that Kraven, the great hunter himself, has his senses and now motive on the other great hunter now prowling the streets of New York, the Predator. And this is really cool because when I first heard this story, you know, I was thinking, wait, a Predator versus Spider-Man? Shouldn't Spider-Man just, you know, like obliterate a Predator? They have trouble with normal humans and normal non-superpowered beings. And in my mind, I was thinking, wait, this would be a great story for Kraven to be against the Predator instead. And as it turns out, I was kind of right, as that's what we're going to get here, which is pretty cool. But yeah, what did you guys all think about this first issue and first installment of this Predator versus Spider-Man series? I think it sets up and rightfully is moving into place where it's not just going to be Spider-Man versus Predator, because as I said, I think Spider-Man would obliterate a Predator in their normal gear. It is setting up more obstacles like the heat in New York, the power outages, and so on and so forth. If you have enjoyed though, leave a like or subscribe if you are new. As always though, this was AJ here at The Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.